Hey everybody, and welcome back to the Love Like Crazy podcast. I'm Jay, this is my beautiful wife Stacey, and we have so much fun doing these podcasts together as we want to help you build a stronger marriage, build a stronger family, and it is great to be able to spend time with you.
That's right. And so we just want to give a big shout out to all of our listeners. Thank you for following along and subscribing, even on YouTube, and sharing with others. If there's an episode that you really like that helps you, share it with someone else. Maybe it can help them as well. And so we appreciate all that you're doing to help us get the word out about this podcast.
I just want to say as we dive off, and I've been telling you this on a regular basis, your hair looks really good.
Oh, well, thank you.
You like that?
Thank you.
Well, you and I are going to dig into some stuff today, and we kind of wanted it to be kind of organic, the direction that we're going to take this episode, and we're going to talk about untreated pain today.
Right. Well, a few weeks back, we hosted a marriage conference at our church, the Love Like Crazy Marriage Conference. And the message that we shared, and I believe it's episode 47, if you want to go back and listen to it, we talked about the baggage that we carry or bring into our marriages, from our upbringing. And so one of the things that we discussed at the marriage conference in that message was talking about untreated pain. And so I just wanted us today to dig in a little bit deeper on that. And even by using, our own personal experiences, that we share a little bit more than we were able to at the conference.
Well, when I do premarital counseling, one of the illustrations that I always use with couples as they're getting ready to step into this covenant is I tell them that one of my responsibilities is to help you deal with some of the baggage that you're going to bring into this marriage. It does not matter how great your expectations might be for a marriage. It does not matter these pie in the sky ideals that you might have, what your marriage is going to look like. It's going to be perfect. We love each other. Ooh, all that kind of stuff. Everybody brings baggage into a marriage, into a relationship. And what that baggage looks like is the opinions, the ideas, the hurts, the disappointments, maybe failed relationships. The things that have happened to you within your personal life that are traumatic, maybe rejection that you have faced, those things affect you. And a lot of times we think, oh, those are behind me, those are in my past, but all too often we stuff those things down into a quote unquote unseen suitcase, and we carry them with us to the next relationship. Or into our marriage. A lot of people love to talk about the stats on marriage, and I say this on a regular basis, that 50% of marriages wind up in divorce court.
Right.
Well, the reality is about 46% of first-time marriages, 52 or 3% of second-time marriages, 63 or 4% of third-time marriages wind up in divorce court. You say, well, why does that number go up? Because you are accumulating more and more baggage or untreated pain, and you are taking that into the next relationship. Right. So the reality is, why don't we just deal with the things that are in our life and allow our marriage to be healed and made whole as we individually are healed and made whole?
Well, I do think, though, first we have to recognize that we are carrying around this extra baggage, that we have maybe some untreated pain or just some things that we would rather just stuff down deep inside and not deal with it.
Yep.
And so I think it has to do with basically owning your stuff and recognizing it, and need be, if help is required, outside help, meaning like a counselor or some pastoral advice or something like that, then we need to be willing and decide to be mature enough to step out and ask for that kind of help.
Well, I think that one good way to look at this is when you get sick in your body, what do?
You go to the doctor.
You get help.
Yeah, you get help.
You step out and get help. I know that I've got a great doctor that I love to go, and it's kind of funny because oftentimes when I go visit him, it's like going to visit a friend more than a doctor. We would visit for quite some time. And, by the end of that, he wants to know, what is the problem? And I'm going to tell him specifically.
And he's trying to get to the root of the problem too.
And I'm going to specifically tell him, these are the symptoms. And then he's going to say, well, that is caused by, and he's going to, diagnose the issue. then he's going to tell me things like eat healthy, exercise, take this antibiotic, whatever the solution might be to the problem,
Right.
because he wants to help heal me and make me better.
Yeah.
Well, in our marriages, one of the verses that kind of pops out at me, I love to quote Proverbs. Proverbs is one of those books that whenever I was growing up, my mom was always quoting Proverbs because it's a book that we look towards for wisdom.
Right.
And Proverbs 13:12 says that hope deferred makes the heart sick, but a dream that is fulfilled is a tree of life. Now, I like that because, you go into your marriage with all these hopes, all these aspirations, all these dreams, and maybe they don't quite turn out the way that you thought, or you think, well, as we're married longer, it's deferred. We get down the road a little bit, our marriage will be happy then. Well, you got to work on it. You got to allow the Holy Spirit to work on you if you really want your marriage to be happy and healthy.
Right.
If you want to live out that dream and for your marriage truly to be a tree of life to you, then it starts with allowing God to work on you and heal you.
Right. And then, and two, we're carrying all of this, these different things, negative things in our life. And then once we get married, unfortunately, learning to live with someone that you've not lived with before, or just learning each other's different idiosyncrasies.
Yeah.
It may cause some of this untreated pain or this baggage to kind of bubble up to the surface. And you're going to deal with it either in a negative way or a positive way.
Well, I know when we got married, I didn't bring a whole lot of, issues into the marriage because I was pretty perfect. All I can say is
this is not true.
You won the lottery. Okay.
I did. I mean, I know I'm extremely blessed. I am. And we've been married now for almost 33 years. But we have been through a lot together, and I can definitely say, and I'm speaking from experience, that when we first got married, I mean, oh goodness, there was a lot of pain that I had in my life, some things I had experienced in my upbringing that really didn't come to the surface until we got married. And I mean, it came out in a lot of my emotions. I realized I was really a very angry person. I had stuffed anger because in my upbringing, I really had never really spoken up for myself. But then when we got married, I started speaking up for myself, right? When you say
just a little.
And just to give you a little bit of background, and there may be a lot of listeners who can identify with this, that maybe there was some form of abuse in your childhood, whether it be emotional or verbal, or
even sexual abuse,
physical abuse as well. I definitely dealt with some of these forms of abuse when I was younger, and verbally, I think I felt very, I don't know, put down. It kind of destroyed a little bit of my
innocence.
My innocence, my self-image was probably tarnished
to
a certain degree.
I would say things to you, talk about how beautiful you were and all these, and it was just kind of like it was hitting Teflon and flying off of you. You wouldn't receive any of it, and I'm like, what is wrong with you? Why don't you believe these things about yourself?
Well, I think I really had the mindset that I probably wasn't good enough, or I wasn't pretty enough. And I mean, if you were to tell me, if we were getting dressed to go out for a date, and you would say, "Oh, I love that outfit. You look really pretty." I could receive something like that and say, "Oh, thank you." But for you to randomly tell me, "You are so beautiful. I love you," and I'm sitting there with, no makeup, I'm not looking my best, I'm not feeling my best, that I would just be like in my mind thinking, no,
you crazy.
Yeah, no, I don't feel beautiful, and I don't think that I look beautiful, but I do appreciate all the efforts that you made in those early years when I really couldn't receive those
One of the
things.
things that I tell people all the time is you cannot be led by your feelings, because your feelings lie to you. And you just said, I may not feel
right,
like I am beautiful. It doesn't matter if you feel it or not. If I think that, or I know that, and I speak that over you,
Mm-hmm.
then it's something that you need to receive and be able to walk in.
Mm-hmm.
I know when we first got married, look, I was 20 years old. I was
We were
immature.
very young, yes.
I was very, selfish. And we go into this marriage, we move in together into this little apartment that I had in Pineville, Louisiana, Tanglewood Terrace, that little 1-bedroom apartment.
Upstairs.
Do
not like upstairs apartments.
I was just excited because we were going to live together, build a life together,
Mm-hmm.
and we get to have sex now. So just fired up about that, and just go into this with this excitement.
Mm-hmm.
And wow, little did I know that I had,
Open a can of
married
worms.
somebody who had a lot of pain in her life
Mm-hmm.
that had been untreated. And the next thing you know, that starts getting like, I guess the only phrase I can come up with, it was taken. I want to say taken out on me, but maybe really I was the recipient in that time because you felt safe with me.
Right. I was going to say you were my safe person, and you were the one that I could, that I was the closest to, that I could confide in. And it just kind of, this untreated pain that I had, some of it that I didn't even realize was there, it started bubbling to the surface. It would manifest in the craziest ways. Like you would come home from work, and maybe it was just something that you said to me, or maybe it wasn't even what you said, it was how you said it to me. Or
women love to say that.
Yeah. It was your tone.
It wasn't what you said, it was how you said it.
It was how you said it. Or that I noticed that if you came up behind me, and you would startle me, I would just almost go berserk on you. And a few times, I'm being real honest here. I'm being real honest. These are the things that did happen. And I mean, it would startle me to such an extent that I would literally turn around and start swinging as if I was being attacked. And that wasn't what you were doing.
I'm just coming up to give you a hug.
Right. You were just trying to come and give me a hug.
Just like what a husband would do to his wife, walks up behind her and like, ooh, what's up, girl?
And there were just certain things that you said or did that, it triggered me is really what happened. And so I would react. I would react in a way that I was trying to defend myself, and I really didn't understand why I was doing that and why that it was mainly towards you until later on. I did seek out help or, discuss these issues with someone who could help me recognize that I really had a lot of pain from my upbringing in the sense that I was very, very close to my mom, but my dad, he was a workaholic, and so he wasn't around all the time. And then when he was around, we just kind of felt it was neglect maybe in the relationship, that we really didn't have a deep relationship. Not that he did tell us that he loved us and all that kind of stuff.
He was a good provider for
He was
the
a
family,
great provider,
but he was emotionally disconnected.
And there was some emotional and verbal abuse. He had anger, and so that would come out towards us. And so I always felt like I was constantly, disappointing, I guess. And so that is what aided in my low self-esteem. I couldn't receive anything positive that you would try to tell me.
In all honesty, though, because I don't want our listeners to think that it was all your dad's fault as well. There was that aspect, but at the same token, that was back in the day that I didn't really understand your love language. It was not really speaking, what
right.
in a way that you really received.
Right. We didn't have a lot of like premarital counseling. We didn't, go to a marriage conference. we really didn't even, if we had a problem, we didn't even go sit down with our pastors at the time. We didn't seek help. It was almost like it was taboo to
talk about your problems.
Right. To talk about your problems or to seek help as far as like going to see a counselor. Well, you were labeled like that's for crazy people.
Right. And let me say this, if we would get into these disagreements, or as you said earlier, you would go berserk.
Yeah.
And sometimes my response oftentimes was that like, oh my God, have you lost your mind? Have you gone crazy? Mm-hmm. And that was like throwing gasoline on the fire.
Yeah. And I was like, don't tell me I'm crazy. Yeah. And so it would just end up in huge fights.
Right. Little did we know that there were things lying beneath the surface that, like you said earlier, being triggered, and it was causing these issues in our marriage. We went through a period there. I remember whenever I asked you to marry me, and the pastors of the church that we were at that time, we went and sat down with them, and the premarital counseling kind of consisted of something like, so y'all want to get married? Yeah. Y'all love each other? Yeah. All right. We're going to pray for you. And that pretty much was it. And we went through a pastoral change. Mm-hmm. And then we had our new pastor come in at that time, and more or less he came into the I'm going to do your wedding. We had him do our wedding, but there really wasn't, any premarital counseling or anything, because he, in his defense, he thought that had already been handled, and we didn't say anything. We didn't know.
Right.
And so that's one of the reasons why now, if I do a wedding, it's a requirement. I will do premarital counseling. We're going to do 3 or 4 sessions, walk through. And I have had a couple of couples that have come in that actually did not wind up getting married because they saw that the differences that they had, maybe they were not a good match. They were not that compatible. And that's always a sad thing. Over the 30 years of ministry, I've seen that happen a couple of times, but that's why it's so important for you to go get premarital counseling. As I like to say, to help unpack some of the baggage, fold some socks, put some underwear away, put the toiletries where they belong. Deal with some of that baggage before you get into the marriage, because marriage is hard work. It's an investment. It's something that you're going to work on and build. So for us stepping into this marriage, there was no baggage unpacked, and I had no idea we were stepping into. Not only that, you were dealing with grief as well because you had lost your mom. I think of this now, and it's like I was so stupid because you had just lost your mom 2 years before I met you.
Right.
And 4 years after we got married. It had only been
a few years when we got married.
Correct. And this is still fairly fresh. Now that I'm getting older and I walk with families through this as a pastor, I understand just how fresh this was, and going through your graduation, these major life markers of graduation,
from college,
engagement, marriage, without your mom there at your side,
right?
Just how difficult that may have been. And so I've told the story before, our honeymoon, we show up, we get married, we drive to Baton Rouge, hotel room, we get there, and I'm like, woohoo!
Yeah.
And you sat on the end of the bed and you started crying. And I'm like, what? Why are you crying?
What did you do wrong?
Yeah. What did I do wrong? Yeah. What have I
something
done
wrong?
You're already crying. And this is not the wonderful and wild honeymoon that I had envisioned. Right. And I didn't know what to do. I remember hugging you, but that was
everything had just kind of caught up with me. Whenever you plan a wedding and you have all the festivities and all the excitement and the anticipation, but yet it can be rather stressful. By the time we got, to the hotel room and things kind of settled, all of a sudden it hit me, and so I wasn't trying to put a damper on what is supposed to be, our honeymoon, but it was really something that I had to deal with at the moment.
Yeah. And now I understand that. I understand exactly what you were in that moment thinking and feeling.
Right.
And, I was not, like I said, 20 years old, immature, selfish. I was not probably the most sensitive guy dealing with that. I was just trying to deal with it as best I knew how. Then we come back from that honeymoon. We step into this, building a life together, and you're responding. I didn't never really grow up seeing my parents. I'm sure that they disagreed. I do remember 1 or 2, arguments that they had, but that, I didn't really see a lot of that growing up. So we step into this, and there's a lot of strife, a lot of arguing, and there were things inside of me that came out towards you whenever you got triggered, and it was just kind of one of these situations.
We can laugh about it now. It really wasn't funny back then.
It was not funny at all. The
No.
makeup was awesome, but as I like
the makeup sex, you mean?
Yes. I'm probably getting turning red now.
Okay, that's all right.
Whenever we preach and we talk about this kind of stuff together, you love to embarrass me and make me blush.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I always tell everybody, you make up so that you can make out. And
yes. And we did a lot of that.
Yeah, there was a lot of arguing.
Well, it was the trying to get to know one another and learn each other's ways, when you first get married. But then it was just, I don't know, it was really just like this storm of emotions that just began to circle around me that I did not have the tools to process things, in a healthy way. Losing my mom, she had been very sick leading up to her death. And so that in itself, being a teenager, caused me to have to grow up really quickly. And so I felt like I was, I had to mature in a way that maybe others were able to enjoy that time of their life, in a better way. And so, stepping into marriage, it's a big thing, a big decision that you make. And so it was quite the learning curve.
Right. And
to say the least.
I think a lot of times whenever we hurt, when we go through things, when there's trauma
Mm-hmm.
from past abuse, a lot of times we just try to slap a smiley face on and pretend like everything's okay.
Put a Band-Aid
I think
on
we
it.
shared this whenever we did the conference in Jeremiah 6. I think it's verse 14. It talks about Jeremiah says that they dress the wounds of the people as though they were not serious. Peace, peace, they say, when there is no peace.
Mm-hmm.
And what that verse is telling us, they're more or less pretending like everything is okay when it's not okay.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times in our marriages and our relationships, we do that. We pretend like everything's okay. Just put on a happy face.
Mm-hmm.
Let's tough our way through this instead of getting to the root of the problem. For me, I talked about going to the doctor earlier. So many times I will not feel well in my body, and you're like, you need to go to the doctor. I'm like, I'm not going to the doctor. I'll be okay. And typically, when that happens, if I do wind up going to the doctor, it's put off quite a few days. I'm okay. I'm fine, to where I finally just get to the point where I don't really have a choice. And as a result, we do the same thing with our relationships. All right, everything's good right now. Everything's fine. So let's just pretend like everything's okay. Well, then you have this cycle that you go through, and it's like all of a sudden you're fussing, you're squabbling, you're arguing. It could be very toxic. And then when things kind of settle down, you're like, well, everything's okay now. So let's not rattle the tiger cage. And so you don't ever really get the help you need. And back when we first got married, a couple of things were taking place. First of all, we didn't really have the resources we needed.
That's true.
And then, we were actually volunteer youth pastors at the church. So you don't want people to know you're walking through this. Although our pastor probably would have said, you know what, that's normal. You're a young married couple. These are things you're going to work your way through. You certainly didn't go get professional counseling, because in those days that was a taboo thing. If you did, you were crazy. And don't let anybody say that.
And don't say that to
would
me.
Trigger you. So we were just kind of stuck. Now, fortunately, we did not throw in the towel.
No. And I want a preference. I mean, it's not like that's all we did was fight. No, it was just that there were certain times things would happen, and like I said, things would be said or done, and it would just cause all those emotions that I had suppressed would just come up to the surface. And I didn't quite know how to process those feelings, and I didn't know why I was feeling that way.
Right.
And it wasn't until later on, probably when we, were having our boys and stuff, that I began to maybe get some help, some
counseling,
some biblical counseling.
You started figuring out these things that are going on.
I started putting
the
puzzle, right. The puzzle pieces were kind of coming together at that time, where I was realizing why those certain things would kind of set me off. And so I did, start working on those past pains that that I was feeling. So things did begin to get better, but that's why I'm like, you have to recognize what the problem is. And so for the longest time, I really didn't have an understanding of why I was feeling that way. And then when and I prayed about it a lot. To be honest, it really was something that I prayed about, because I felt like there was just these things that were coming in between us being closer,
Right.
In our marriage. Why are you?
I'm laughing because we prayed about these things together a lot. And I would pray something like, Lord, please help her not to be so crazy.
Please help her not to be so mean to me. Yeah. And then of course, I mean, like you said, it was, some of the things were just maturity on our part. We were young, and we just, we just, as we matured, then we were able to work out things
right.
in our marriage.
And I don't want our listeners to think that you were the only ones who came into this marriage. I said earlier, like, you won the lottery, like I came into the marriage and I'm awesome. And that's by and large pretty true.
No,
there were issues that I brought into the marriage as well. Things that very opinionated, very stubborn,
not extremely patient.
And still am not. That's something that the Lord constantly is working on me about. And so with that said, we're just trying to make our way through. But when you couple that in, I mean, by and large, my mom and dad, they have a great marriage. They modeled for me, in my opinion, what a healthy marriage should look like. But there were still things inside of me that were the immaturity, the selfishness, the stubbornness, just a lot of things that people bring into life. But then you couple that with somebody who's coming out of dealing with grief, dealing with trauma, dealing with things from past abuse, and I'm not equipped to handle this. And man, it was not a healthy situation. No. Fortunately, because here's what a lot of people do when they walk through times like this. They isolate themselves. They push away from each other. There's a distance there. And that's exactly what the devil wants. He wants to drive a wedge there in your marriage to cause distance between you.
Right.
And then unfortunately, a lot of times people wind up seeking, the arms of somebody else because there's distance there. And then they eventually might even wind up in divorce court as a result.
Right.
Fortunately, that was not the course for us. We went into marriage like divorce is not an option. And your parents stayed married until your mom passed. My parents are still married. They celebrated 50 years this past December. And we said divorce is not an option.
Right.
And we may have disagreed and argued and fought a lot, but we still worked those things out and worked our way through those things. So we come to this place where you decide, hey, I need to get some help.
Right.
You start putting the puzzle pieces together, and we had not allowed this to cause a division between us.
Yeah. Well, I do think, because it was something, we were both believers, when we married, I did pray and ask the Lord to show me, what the root cause of some of these issues that I was having. And I mean, God has been faithful to send me the help and the resources needed. But I do think it took me being willing to be vulnerable enough and honest enough to talk to you about the situation, the things that I was feeling, but then also to go and seek professional help as well, whether it's taboo or not, And so I would encourage anyone, all of our listeners, don't ever feel ashamed to go and seek professional help for, whatever the situation may be.
Or let me say this, it's a wonderful thing to be involved in a good Bible believing, Bible teaching church.
Yes.
That is going to preach the gospel. And in your involvement in that church, to go sit down with your pastors, go sit down with your pastor and his wife and share what's going on in your life and get some help there. I know for us, we love to sit and meet with people.
Yeah.
I've heard a lot of people talk about, well, counseling is not my favorite thing in the world. But then I have a lot of friends, like for us, we love to sit down with people and help them navigate the different things that they're walking through. And we've had ones in our life who have helped us in that regard as well. And so I would tell you, get help. Don't stay where you are. Don't think that it's normal. You didn't start realizing, and I didn't even know this until you started, like you said, the puzzle pieces started coming together. You sat down and started talking, getting good biblical counsel from someone. And I remember you coming home and telling me, these are some things that the Lord has revealed to me. And I was just like, well, that makes a lot of sense, because that's why you would respond in this way.
Yeah. So the puzzle pieces started coming together where I'm like, okay, I realized, that certain things were said and done in my past that caused me to struggle with the emotions that I had, and to respond and react to you the way that I did. And so I discovered the root. And once I did, then I had, the choice to say, okay, I'm going to work on this. I'm going to deal with my stuff. And so, just by recognizing what had happened in my past, the different abuse that I had incurred, then, and talking to you about it, then we were able, honestly, we could work on it together. Yeah. That you could help me, and we could help each other, so that I could get to a place of wholeness. And so really, for me to even be talking about all of this on this podcast, it's a huge thing, because even though I received a lot of healing, I didn't want to talk about it. Yeah. I didn't want to tell anybody. I still felt a certain level of shame that kind of kept me bound for a long time. But we were able to, work on these things because we were working on it together. But then there was also the level of, there's just certain things that I had to deal with myself, that you couldn't help me with. That was strictly like the Lord revealing to me with the biblical counsel that I received, seeing the truth of God's word, applied to my life and spoken over me, because I was believing so many lies of the enemy, that had really damaged my self-image. And so reprocessing, having a mind shift to see myself as the Lord sees me, and what He has for me. I just really saw God's faithfulness in the healing process in my life. And so there was a lot of healing that took place. But once my grandmother passed away a couple of years ago, we mentioned this on a couple of other episodes, I made a conscious effort to pursue a grief counselor to help me not only with the loss of my granny, but it was all the compounding loss that I had experienced over the years. And that in turn led to talking through some other things that were traumatic in my life. And so the Lord has used that to bring about a healing and a wholeness to my life that I had not experienced before. And so now I want to tell others, hey, if you're struggling, seek help. Pray about it. The Lord can send you the resources. And if you will determine to work on these things, then that healing is there for you. God's faithful to take care of you.
Well, and I think back, Paul writes in Romans chapter 12, he talks about walking out God's good and perfect will. Mm-hmm. And that comes our way by allowing God to renew our mind, not conforming to the world's standards, and allowing Him to renew and transform our mind. And so as you begin to allow the Holy Spirit to work on you and change you from the inside out, mm-hmm. then our marriage could come to the place where I'm not going to say we had a bad marriage. We had a good marriage, but we were just kind of making our way through these things that we didn't recognize in reality was untreated pain.
Yes.
And as you came to the realization, I want God to work on these things and renew me on the inside, then it's amazing how you can walk out the will that He has for your life, for our marriage, and for our family.
Right.
And now here we are, empty nesting, mm-hmm. and we're able to kind of share our story with people and maybe even help people through what they might be facing.
Yeah. And, I think if I had not dealt with all of that untreated pain, being at this season, as an empty nester probably would not be as good, as it is now if I had not dealt with those things, because it was a hindrance to us growing closer together. And that was not God's best.
No, definitely not his will nor his plan. So
Right.
It's good to be able to, we like to tell people we're best friends, and I think that after all these years of marriage, I think every year gets better. I think a lot of times people think the early years are it's the honeymoon years. That's the best. No, for us, the every year, in my opinion, our marriage just gets better and better, and we get closer and closer. And so, I think it's because we allow God to help you deal with the things that were there. I allow God to help deal with the things that were in my life and brought us to a place of a healthy marriage.
Right.
So, well, this has been good.
It has.
I hope that this has helped our listeners today. And maybe there's something you're walking through that you don't quite understand. And I'll say this again, get help. Don't hold that in. Get help. Go talk to your pastor. Seek out a good, godly, biblical counselor who will help you deal with those things and allow God to help you be healed so that you can live out his good and pleasing will and plan for your life.
Yeah, don't let that untreated pain keep you from drawing closer to your spouse. Don't allow that to be an act of division between you, but draw closer to each other and allow the Lord to work in your life.
Yeah. Well, thank you for being a part of this podcast today. This has been a very personal topic for us, something that, as she said earlier, she hasn't always shared because many times the enemy would cause her to feel shame about that. The devil would tell her, you don't want to talk to people about that. And now she's becoming more and more open about it. And I believe that it is helping people like you be able to see things within your life and allow God to bring healing to your life as well. And so if you've enjoyed this, make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel. Just click that little button that says subscribe, and it'll let you know. It'll alert you upcoming podcasts that are coming up, different episodes. Make sure that you like or leave us a comment, give us a review. We love to hear from our listeners, and thank you for being a part of this podcast. And as always, I'm Jay.
And I'm Stacey.
And this is Love Like Crazy.